Hey, this is Alan Troutman, and you are listening to WithoutYourHead.com. I don't know how you can listen without your head, but there you are.
Welcome back to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm still Nasty Neil.
This is Heather Heather Mama Creepy Arkham.
Yeah.
And that would make me Terrible Troy.
It would. And that would also make, we have a guest here. We have Jesse Blanchard on the line of Puppetcore, which I have to say looks absolutely amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
I feel like I need an alliteration title, though, like...
Jay's hard.
Yeah, there we go. Jolly Jesse. That's
all right, that works. We formerly did have a Jay host on the show, and he was Jittery John.
Ah, Jittery John. There we go.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, but it sounds like you're way more fun. So, just from what I've heard.
Yeah. But, so I got the email about Puppetcore, and so I watch it, and then not just because you're here, I watched the trailer, and I was like, oh my god, this looks awesome. It's puppets and horror, and it's just like, this rules. So, how did the whole idea come about?
Yeah, well, thanks. Basically what happened was I made films for a long while, and I was always frustrated. I didn't have a lot of resources, and things just always kind of fell apart, and you would write something and do all these different bits, and it just didn't work. And then I wrote a feature, and I was like, how am I going to do this? And I knew that I wanted the main creature to be a puppet, in the industry term kind of version of like kind of a classic, real rubber puppet monster. And I was thinking, oh God, I'm never going to get what I want to do this movie, and I don't want to change the movie. So how could I do it? And I had this idea. I was like, what if everybody was a puppet? And it was, both exciting and completely ridiculous at the same time. But I said, well, let's do a short film and see how it goes. So I'd wanted to do a barbershop horror short for a long time. So it's like, all right, let's do this with puppets. And I just had a blast. I just had like a really good time. And I said, okay, let's try something else. And that's basically what happened.
So I assume that like you had a history with puppets, but so was this your first use of puppets?
Frank and Zed is not, no. Mm-hmm. So I did two shorts. I did basically this short Shine, which I'll send you.
Oh, that one's great. I love that one.
Oh, did you watch that? Cool.
Yeah.
And then I did another kind of proof of concept for this monster movie, the one that kind of got me into puppets, called Chompers. And then basically Frank and Zed was supposed to be a 15-minute film. And then it became a 30-minute film. And then we doubled the Kickstarter. And I was like, all right, well, let's make like a 60-minute film. And then once we had made the 60-minute film, I wrote the battle. And the battle had like a real long checklist of stuff that I felt needed to happen. And so the battle ended up being 30 minutes long. And I was like, oh, oops, it looks like we have a feature with this just like absurdly exhausting, just crazy battle where, these puppets just do hand-to-hand combat. And you try and keep it interesting and fun for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great. It looks so funny. Oh my God. I watched the previews, and I can't wait.
Oh, well, thank you.
Good.
So you said, totally exhaust. How much time is put into, because I assume just even make the puppet has to take a lot of time. And roughly, if you had a guess, how much time per minute or so does it take to, to create some scenes?
So I can tell you that on average, we get 11 shots per day. Some days it's far fewer. There's there's at least 20 shots in the film that are more than a day. Now that's just the filming, so that's not building anything. Oh. So at 11 shots a day, we've completed 1,500 shots on the film.
Wow.
It's really an absurd amount of work. And
wow, that's intensive.
It's crazy because the thing is, every single shot is a special effect. I mean, it really is. Right. Because, if a puppet is going to use two hands and talk, that's two people who have to work perfectly in unison. and the camera has this incredibly thin margin where you don't see the puppeteer or the person controlling stuff or all these other things. And that's, so just to get the puppets to kind of do something is very hard. And to get it to actually seem real and not to seem like a lump of fabric is almost impossible. And every shot without fail starts as a total failure. You just have to work it. And it's brutal. It's a lot of fun. I mean, there are a couple. There's actually one in the beginning of the Kickstarter where Frank slices this guy's head off and his head flops off and all these blood and guts shoots out. And he kind of comes forward and it's just ended up being perfect. That one, we got in one take. And I think oh, wow. That was an instance I was like, we're never going to do it better. Let's just move on. But there's maybe, I mean, that might be the only one in the film that way. Otherwise, it's just failure. It's just pure failure with, a diamond in the rough every once in a while.
Uh-huh. So I assume this is R-rated puppets.
I hope so. I will be disappointed if it's not. Yeah.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's like, there's no sex. You don't see any puppet boobies. Oh, so that might be PG-13 in the world we live in.
Now.
Well, you can watch the Chompers teaser. You can watch the Chompers teaser, and you'll maybe that one will float your boat a little bit better. But it is one of those things. I mean, it is like, the ratings seem so arbitrary, right? It's like, do you feel the violence is kind of how they seemingly kind of put them on. So then this one, will people feel it or not? Who knows? I mean, I was really surprised. We've had a lot of parents who love the short and all that stuff, kind of with their 8-year-olds, and watch it with their 8-year-olds. And actually, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she's really into Frank and Zed as well too. So I don't, I don't know. I mean, the puppets just kind of stretch it into kind of a bizarre, kind of gray area. But I hope it's R. I hope it's R. We might have to do some reshoots if we get slapped with the PG-13.
Right. Well, we have to add more blood, more gore. Yeah.
The battle is called the Orgy of Blood, and so that there might be enough sexual connotations in that to slide it over safely into an R rating.
There you go. Oh, that's perfect. So exactly how many puppets did you have to make for this?
So there's I think there's about 30 kind of primary villager puppets. So, so Frank and Zed, one of the things that a risk that we took with the film, but I think totally works, is that you have these like hyper realistic silicone puppets as the monsters. And then you just have these kind of, they're not generic. It was important that I really didn't want kind of the generic puppet look, which has just become kind of ubiquitous, this kind of certain crank yankers look.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was important to me that all the characters are real. But anyways, so Frank and Zed take about a year to make each.
Oh, wow.
Or together. And then these other guys, they're everything from a day or two to, kind of a week. And anyway, so in that range, there's about maybe 30. But then there's all the squirrels and bats. There's a cat with that I just absolutely love, and that. So anyways, a long way of saying that maybe 30 or so puppets.
Wow.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. So I should say the trailer is really just a proof of concept. That's something we did. We've done at least 1,200 more shots and done all the villagers and all that stuff. And that's what you see a bit on the Kickstarter page, is kind of how the world has expanded. That original trailer is really contained. It's really just a slice of it.
I think that's what I meant that I had watched, was the Kickstarter was what I had watched, not the trailer.
Yeah. Well, you should definitely, the trailer, you get to see these guys in action. So it's
nice.
It's much more fun. Yeah, you get to see the world. You get to hear them and stuff. It's definitely
okay, I went just the opposite. I saw that and not the Kickstarter one.
Well, there's something for both of you.
Yep.
We've got homework, Troy.
Yes,
yeah, there we go.
But then you guys have to watch the Barbershop Quartet one, because that one's so much fun. The Shine one.
Yeah, Shine.
How long did that one take to make?
That one went together really quickly, so maybe a month or so.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean, I storyboard really extensively, and so once we got the storyboards together, I think we shot it in 2-3 days.
Wow!
And the lead puppeteer, his name is Jason Ropp, and he's really just phenomenal. And Frank and Zed would not work without this guy. I mean, he's really the artist, and we just have kind of a mind meld when it comes to the humor and some of this other stuff. But anyways, we met randomly on Craigslist. I put up an ad like, hey, I want to do a puppet horror film, and he responded, and we didn't know each other at all. Mm-hmm. And then we did Shine, and it worked out really well. And then of course we did this other one, Chompers, which also worked out really well. And then we've worked together on Frank and Zed. But he is fast. I mean, that's one of the things I love about him. I should say, he made almost all of the kind of felt puppets.
Wow.
I made the big, huge guy. Mm-hmm. And then there's another artist who made named Aaron DeBray, and he's the one that did Frank and Zed, basically. I did all the mechs and this stuff to kind of make them move, but he's the artist that really kind of made them as amazing as they are.
Yeah, I love the look of them.
They really just turned out great.
Actually, I love the look of all of it, though. I mean, like the village.
Yeah, even the backgrounds and everything.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
And the brains are just super.
It's been, it's funny. It's a fantasy film, so you have to have these rigid rules. I mean, you really do, and one of the things is like, hey, the blood and guts and stuff, it's going to be as real as we can make it. And everything in the world is super, super real, except the villagers. They're very, very fake. But if you mix it up or you stumble, it just, people kind of absorb these rules. So you gotta really play by them. But that was one of the things that was like really fun. It's like slicing open a puppet and seeing this like really juicy kind of candy colored brain in there.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
It's before you even did the shorts. Did you have any prior experience with puppets?
Not really, honestly. No. I mean, I grew up in the theater, and I was aware of puppets like everybody is, but no. I mean, the answer is really a no. I just I'd made a ton of shorts that had some really good stuff, but I was just so frustrated with how they were turning out. And it was really just out of sheer desperation that I said, I just have to do something totally different. And the biggest thing that I really underestimated that seems kind of obvious now is that my work would be different, that it would just have something that would make it kind of, stand out. And I continued to do puppets for all of the very real advantages that they bring. But it's also been really cool to see that this thing that I feel like I came to really naturally has had this other place where it pays off, where I can just say like, hey, what I'm doing is a little bit different. Come check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where did the story for Frank? I'm sorry. Did you have something?
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was saying, where did the story of Frank and Zed come about?
I was just going for a swim, which I don't exercise very often, and when I do, I always get great ideas. So there's almost a fear sometimes of exercising. You're like, oh God, I'm not going to be able to do these ideas until I finish this film. So it was one of those rare occasions I was going for a swim, and the idea of this Frankenstein that had a glass dome on his head, and this zombie that would kind of chew on the glass dome, kind of gnaw on it, just kind of popped in. And that was just this image I really wanted, these two guys and this zombie that would chew on this glass dome, kind of like a dog would chew on a bone or something.
I'll say that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of my dog.
Yeah, that's and Zed. That's how Zed starts. I mean, that's how that's really when we first meet Zed. He's kind of like a lovable puppy dog that just kind of doesn't eat dog food. He eats something else. And anyway, so that popped in, and the original short was that the Frankenstein guy was kind of an aspiring or wanted to do music basically, and he kind of stumbled upon the fact that that the zombie, his buddy Zed, if he fed him brains, the zombie would absorb some of the abilities, which since has, become apparently iZombie, that idea. So I'm glad I didn't go that way. And anyway, so Frank would go around and get a bunch of musicians to try and feed to his buddies so that they could start a band. It was more humorous, kind of in the realm of Shine. It was going to be like 8 minutes long, but that's where it started.
Mm-hmm. And I like the dome there because it's always tempting the zombie. You can see the brain.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's right there waiting for him. The whole film.
So what's it like to use fire around puppets? I assume that can be dangerous because I would think puppets are very, very flammable.
Yeah, I mean the fire is funny because the puppets aren't that flammable. Actually, I mean, well, they are and they aren't. They kind of burn and melt. So the real danger is everything, especially these puppets, is one of a kind.
Right.
And so one of the things with the fire that becomes really tricky is that you have to shoot things progressively. And so basically
so if someone gets melted, then
what do you do?
Right.
Because you can't, I mean, we can't make Frank and Zed again. That would it would just take way too long. I mean, but they're not really flammable. But all the other villagers, they're built with such a uniqueness. We tried to rebuild one and they just look totally different. Wow. So anyway, so that's with the puppets. That's the real trick. Is like once you melt them, you're screwed. You're out with that puppet. And and you have this thing where you got to do at least 20 takes to get it right. Everyone's got to be safe, and you have to have like an absurd amount of fire for it to even seem like anything. I mean, you have to have everybody kind of like shit in their pants by the amount of fire, and it'll look like something's kind of going on. I mean, it's like when you try to take a photo of the moon, right? And it looks amazing, and it's huge, and it's beautiful. And then you look at what your iPhone did. You're like, this sucks.
Yeah, it's like this little pin dot of yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
That's how it is with film. That's how it is with like all the practical effects. You have to, everything has to be soaked in blood, and it'll be like, it'll be kind of okay.
More blood.
Yeah. So anyways, but the fire, I mean, it is definitely tricky. But the payoff, I mean, definitely, like, especially with the torches, like
that's
something
just
about
so cool.
Yeah, something about the puppets with holding the torches. It's like so fun.
I kept looking because I'm like, did they do like a computer generate? No, that's a real torch. That's
awesome. Oh yeah, it's all real. Oh, I know what I was going to say with the fire breathing. So one thing that happened though that we learned is we use hot glue a lot, obviously, because it's, you can move fast and it's relatively strong and it's relatively inexpensive. Well, alcohol releases hot glue. And so one of the things that happens is you're squirting, especially when you're doing the fire breathing, you're squirting this kind of bottle of booze. And what we didn't realize at first is basically the puppet and everything that's holding together is getting soaked in alcohol and also just like literally falling apart. But you're also pushing so fast. You're trying to get things so quickly because everyone's arms are wearing out and you only have X amount of time. And anyway, so that was, it's just absurd. I mean, it's the kind of thing you look back and you're like, what were we doing?
But
how did we make that work?
and CG fire always looks terrible. Like even really big budget movies, it's something that always looks very bad. So,
well, with this you want the fire kind of moving across the fur and the face. You want them lit up by it. You put them in somewhere dark, and then the fire moves across, and it just looks so cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what about the blood? Do you have to make sure it's something you can like clean off?
So the blood, yes. I mean, the fake blood, we got really lucky in that it cleans up really remarkably well. The real trick with that is that it just gets so ridiculously sticky. And that's where like everything just becomes glued together. So that's kind of...
I was wondering how you did that because I know how I make fake blood. And it doesn't come out so easy.
Yeah, so the puppets cleaned up pretty well as long as you did it relatively quickly. So we really lucked out there. It wasn't until we got to some of the more physical damage, kind of really ripping them apart, that it was kind of like no going back. But we did, because we did a fair amount. I mean, there's one time my poor assistant director where you know, because it's so hard to get the shots, we didn't shoot what's called coverage. You're not shooting like extra setups. You're shooting like the bare minimum to get stuff. Just really like, I mean, even half sentences and stuff like that, because it just takes too long. Anyway, so there's times where I would take, a head that had been just completely covered in blood and totally butchered and say like, hey, we got to get this guy waking up in the morning and see what you can do.
Oh, no.
And just clean him up. And maybe, if we have to shoot a scene where he falls into some spaghetti sauce, I mean, whatever, we'll figure it out. But, anyway, you have to improvise. I mean, that's one of the things where I call it guerrilla animation, where you're just pushing really quickly. And also the challenge I set was I didn't want to repeat stuff. I don't want to see the same thing. So everything you learn is almost immediately useless, because you're like, well, we're going to do something different for this effect, because we've seen that. So, but anyways, I don't know if that answers your question.
Guerrilla animation. I like that.
Oh, thanks. That's definitely what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are some?
All about I'm all about the practical. And we had a guest on last week, and we were talking about the practical blending in with the CGI, and I'm a huge practical fanatic. So, I was really into this when I saw that it was like, they're not using any CGI here. This is all practical. I'm like, this is great. Like, just great. I'm like, this must have taken a lot of work and been kind of a pain. But, like, when it gets done, like, the product that you have, like, you see all that art that, that art comes through. The real artistry really comes through in the end product. So,
thank you.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to see the whole thing. I can't wait. Very excited.
Yeah.
There's one. Oh, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say there's one practical effect I'm particularly proud of, which is I had this like strong memory of a 9th grade chemistry class, and we saw this what's called the oscillating iodine clock reaction. And essentially you have these two kind of solutions that mix together, and then they just kind of turn dark black instantly and then turn white when you add like these crystals. And so we use that as a practical effect for someone being poisoned. And then so it looks, it would be the kind of thing that's like super easy to do in post, but we use just chemistry to get this liquid to change color. It was like really fun. It took 2 days to get that shot, and and a lot of chemistry, kind of buffing up on chemistry to figure it, to get the ratios and stuff right. But anyways, it was super fun and
yeah.
Anyway,
because you're not going to use science class.
Exactly. I was going to say, now you can find your junior high or freshman year science teacher and show them the movie now.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to be like, I told you would use this in life someday.
Well, it was actually Mrs. Fisher, so a lady science teacher. But
very nice.
I'm realizing now.
Little shout out.
With the Facebook, I might actually be able to track her down.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually. So
look what I could do.
I saw some really cool rewards on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah, there's some stuff I'm excited about. We have to build this murder village, and I really want to get people's faces and names into the village, and to have them kind of shape maybe what their character does. Like, maybe they're a tanner. We've got one guy who's going to be the apothecary. So that's one of the rewards I'm excited about. What did any of them jump out at you, or what did you?
Well, I like that too. The where you can get your name like on a gravestone, or your face in the glass.
Yeah, that's cool.
I also just like that you can get props from the movie. You get little pieces of puppets or scenery. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Or as I like to call it, swag.
Yeah, I've been thinking about some stretch goals, and one of the ones I wanted to do was to maybe, if there might be some cobblestones in the village, and I thought, if we hit our funding goal it would be fun to get everybody's either maybe just their initials or something of every backer, kind of regardless of what they chipped in, and to kind of pencil those in on all the cobblestones. And then maybe on cool. And then you could kind of download a wallpaper or something like that. Or maybe on the DVD menu, there'd be a place where you could kind of find your initials on these cobblestones. And I just think it'd be a really cool texture, right?
Just stroll through there and look for your initials.
Yeah, and kind of hunt yourself down. Oh, you guys like it? Maybe. All right, maybe we'll
make brilliant. I love it.
All right, this will be the announcement then. You guys can say like, hey,
without your head exclusive, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Without your head exclusive, the get funded Kickstarter. Yeah, let's do it.
I like it. We just lost Heather. We're going to try to get her back here.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I do want to say, so how many people are working on this besides yourself?
I've got a core group of about 4 or 5. I would say a core group of 5 people, including me, who are kind of the heart and soul of the project. We really, we were in full swing for about 8 months last year. And so that's when the group was really on board, and we had some Kickstarter funds, which went out really quickly, but at least kind of, would pay for food and grease the wheels. And now, so anyways, that's about it. I mean, a lot of it is me. I'm still doing, I don't know, 60, 70% on my own. But that's the core group.
Mm-hmm. So, what are you going to do when it's finished? What kind of platforms? DVDs, Blu-ray, video on demand?
Yeah, I mean, the dream would be to get it into as large a festival as possible,
sure.
Just because I mean, that would make so much of the next stuff easier, right? Mm-hmm. That's just getting a platform to show people. So that's the hope. It's tough though, because the large festivals, they only want to premiere, and the submission process is really long. It's like 4 or 5 months. So it can be, by the time you submit it and then they kind of say yes and roll it out, it takes a long time. So I also don't want to sit on this film for forever. So anyways, long way of saying the dream is to get it into a festival, just to hopefully spread the word much easier. And then, but regardless, I want to get it to fans. And we did one little convention just for fun, and I just had a blast. And so I would love to go to horror conventions and just set up a booth and maybe, kill a puppet while we're there or something, just have a good time.
I was actually going to say, I know that at some conventions I've been at, they've premiered movies at and stuff, and that might be another way to get your movie out there. Show it at conventions, because you can't get better word of mouth than horror junkies. Woo! Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
we spread the word.
Well, the horror community, that's one of the things that I think that people who aren't into horror don't understand, is how strong the community is. And there's kind of this, there's just such a great affinity, and kind of you have a bit of an instant, like, you kind of, feel like the person a little bit, even if you've never met. You have just this little kind of tenuous connection. And and I think maybe that's what you're talking about, gets really just ramped up and kind of crystallized when you're at a convention. You're like, oh, fuck yeah, everybody in the room has this like mind meld with me. And also the genre is so deep that other people there are into some cool thing that you haven't seen, and vice versa. So there's also this like really kind of this joy of discovery being in that environment, which is like so cool.
Very true.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea when it will be like available?
I'm hoping for kind of March at the latest. I mean, it's close to done, and the the miniatures are the kind of thing that are going to take 3 weeks to a month to build, but hopefully won't take more than a week or two to shoot. There's some special effects miniature shots where some puppets that get launched out windows with fire and some other stuff. So those might be. There's one sequence in particular where somebody gets like launched out a window, but their intestines get caught, and so they're kind of swinging by their intestines. They're holding the torch and the flame goes up the intestines and then they crawl up the intestines.
I'm falling in love.
Ooh, I know. Like if I wasn't sold already.
That little sequence is something that I've had for a long time and just been desperate to shoot. So yeah, I'm hoping March. I'm hoping it's, I've got the next, couple films, honestly, that I want to do. And so really the trick is like, hey, can we finish Frank and Zed at a good enough level that when we go to do this again, we can do it a little faster, that we have just a little bit more kind of behind us. Yeah. And, but like everything in life, where's that line? Who knows?
Yeah.
But March, I guess.
That's awesome that you're going to be. I wouldn't have thought it'd be ready by then. I mean, it just seems like so much to me, like because it's not something that I've never worked with puppets, but it just seems like it's so much intensive work making a puppet and then going through it all, and it's it just seems like so much, and the fact that you're going to be ready to rock, by then, I'm excited. I'm going to be counting down the days.
Well, thanks.
I'm going to get a special calendar.
Some sort of like twisted advent calendar.
Yeah, pretty much. I've got one for Halloween. I do. I've got it. Yeah, I do. I have one that counts down for Halloween. So, it's my favorite holiday. Come on now.
I have to say these mini Frank and Zed heads are pretty awesome. Through the Facebook page.
Oh, those. So you might be seeing, those are the original maquettes.
Ah.
Yeah, those are the original maquettes. We actually made these little mini Frank and Zeds that are kind of like I described them as like the toy you always wanted to get in your cereal box, but so they're like big. They're like 2.5 inches tall, super detailed, like solid resin. And we cast them in all these candy, like 80s candies colors, pink and blue and stuff. But anyways, yeah, those are the original maquettes, and from I don't know 4 or 5 years ago, and you can if you look at them, you can see some of the changes we made in kind of making their eyes bigger, making them friendlier, but still keeping them monsters. Mm-hmm. And the Zed maquette, one thing that's kind of cool on that is that the whole side of his head is missing.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, so that's something the sculptor Aaron, I said, hey, just make this is kind of how he should look, and he had this great zombie sculpture, and then he just started cutting into the side of its head, and I was like, what's he doing? He looked like he was destroying it.
Yeah.
But thankfully I shut up and he kept going, and he had that awesome texture. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, all right, our zombie has to pick and eat his own brain. Like someone would like pick and eat their nose. That's what we got to have him do, which is that's how Zed introduces him in the film. And I'm like, I don't think a zombie has done that. I think we've managed to find something new with the zombies. That's not just a puppet thing, but actually a zombie doing something like so obvious. Anyways, yeah, and it's fun when you first meet him. Zed picks and eats his own brain, and Frank is trying to stop him from having that dirty habit.
We don't pick and eat our own brains. Come on now.
Now a technical question.
Okay.
About the difference between a Frankenstein's monster and a zombie. What would be the difference? Could you consider Frankenstein's monster a zombie?
I mean, I think that's and I thank you for yes, Frankenstein's monster and not Frank and all that. So just get that out of the way. I'm glad that hasn't come up because you don't want to just say like, yes, I know, but who wants to say Frankenstein's Monster and Zed? That's a terrible title. So just give me a pass, please.
It doesn't have a
I don't know. Yeah, it's awful. It might be Frankenstein's monster and a reanimated corpse. Ugh.
Yeah.
That flows right off the tongue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you very much in our world, these guys have a symbiotic relationship. So in the world of Frank and Zed, Frank has to go out and hunt for brains, and feed those to Zed. That's what keeps Zed around. And without him, I don't know, he'll perish somehow, wither away, or fall apart, basically. And Frank has to get charged. And so they have this, you kind of learn he had this master that built him and kind of made him. And that guy got killed long ago. And these are just these kind of broken down servants that have just, everyone's forgotten about, that are just kind of, eking out this living in the castle. And so at least in this world, that would be the difference, is that Frank is kind of charged each night like a Chevy Volt or something. And Zed is, fed these brains. And actually another difference that's, I think, kind of exciting in the film, you find out that Frank, he actually has kind of the soul of every person who got cut together, is stuffed inside of him. And so he's actually not even just a him. He's kind of a him, and there's a her, and there and some other people, and all these different souls. They all got tricked.
Kind of schizophrenic.
It's more
a schizophrenic soul.
Yeah, but yeah, they're kind of, basically. It's not so, it's not like Split or anything. It's more like there's more like a chorus, or like a group is kind of, is kind of in his, they're all kind of sharing the controls. But yeah. But that would be some of the differences, at least in this film.
Mm-hmm. What are some of your inspirations to make a puppet horror film?
Definitely. I mean, obviously, Dark Crystal is a big one, and Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles was another big one, of course.
Mm-hmm.
A film though that's kind of a bizarre inspiration was actually the Fantastic Mr. Fox. And what happened there is right after I got the idea to do puppets, I had Fantastic Mr. Fox. I hadn't watched it. I didn't want to watch it for some, just sometimes there's some reason you're like, I this is my favorite band, or my favorite CD by my favorite band, and I'm not going to listen to anything else by them. It was one of those things you just have this weird, I don't want to watch it. Anyway, so I watched, I was like, I'm going to watch Fantastic Mr. Fox, and if it's good, if I like it, then I'll try this puppet thing. And I loved it. And it was just like different, and it wasn't that kind of DreamWorks or only certain kind of animated film. It had other stuff in there. Anyway, so I would also, I'd say those would be kind of the animation roots. But then aside from that, as far as like the film itself, I think actually what's kind of interesting about it is that it's not shot like a puppet film. So really, it's kind of like, and I actually had these, we're not making a puppet film goals. I said very specifically, there's things like when you typically, a lot of times when you see puppet films, they're puppeteers who have made a film, and I'm very much a filmmaker who decided to use puppets and said, I'm going to shoot these guys. So for instance, there's a lot of shots like in the trailer, you see just their hands. We have full body shots. We have like a lot of big sets. The camera moves a lot, and I really use the camera to control the viewer and to get away with stuff, with the puppets. So, arms that switch and all these kind of different things, tricks to make it seem like more is happening, kind of the illusion building. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, it's really kind of the classic, 80s, 90s directors like Spielberg, et cetera, who really control the camera and really kind of, hey, you're seeing A, and then it comes over to B, and somebody walks in and hits that mark kind of thing. That's at least how the first chunk of the film is. And then when you get into the battle, it goes into just kind of handheld craziness. But anyways. I
really like your...
Yeah. What are you saying,
I
Heather?
really like I was just saying, I really like the pick a death / co-producer on the Kickstarter. That's really awesome. That one and the other one where you can pick the death of a friend or yourself or an enemy. I'm like, God, I could have my brother.
So
that was the first thing that popped. Where
Heather,
you can.
I should say, so those are from the original Kickstarter. So we're doing another one now, like an updated one for finishing funds. That's been, which has been one of the challenges.
I was like really excited. I'm like, man, I could watch my brother die. Not like I'd want my brother to die, but I know he would like freak out and love something like that, and I would also get a kick out of that. So, I was like, oh, that'd be so much fun.
You can still get his name on a tombstone.
Yeah. So you're doing you have two different Kickstarter sites then, or?
So the long story is we did a Kickstarter in 2015, kind of with the trailer, and that was for a 30-minute film, and it was really successful. We doubled our goal, and with twice the money, we turned it into a feature. So we stretched that into 3 times as long, and then basically, kind of essentially, what happened was I realized I was like, you know what, I can either spend the next 2 years making this film, or I can like try and do another Kickstarter, get some more funds, and just finish it right, and also give an opportunity to show more people what we're doing, and to have people. So if like your brother, you want to do something to honor him, I'm like, okay, we can get him in on a tombstone, or we'll do a gargoyle, do some other things. But anyway, so we launched another Kickstarter, so I could finish this thing faster, and not have it kind of limp along for another year. At this ridiculously slow pace. So that's what we're doing now. That's what I hope to do.
Okay, cool. Now did you? I saw that you had a thing about Stan Winston's school. Now, did you go to Stan Winston's school, or was that? Did you guys work with Stan Winston's school, or was that just like an article?
No, so the Stan Winston School of Character Arts is this online kind of learning tool, or it's a website that has tutorials that is just amazing. We've chatted with them and stuff a little bit, but no real strong connection aside from just watching the tutorials. But the amount of information we've taken from them, it's just phenomenal. I mean, so for instance, the original Frank mold is made of plaster of Paris. I'm spacing on the name. What is it? I mean, it's the new word for plaster of Paris. The word for plaster of Paris that's not from the 40s. Anyways, and that thing's like brittle, and there's just one, and blah blah blah. And then after watching the tutorials, we did the following one in fiberglass. So Zed's mold is in fiberglass, and it's just such a better mold, and that's just like one little example. Silicone is like, it's impossible. Like nothing sticks to silicone. So painting silicone, if you don't have someone kind of show you the technique, you're just totally screwed. Anyway, so but anyway, so that's a long way of saying, like, we just watched the tutorials, but I mean, Frank and Zed shows you how much, really what you can do. I mean, with just kind of going for it on your own, and with some resources like the Stan Winston School at your fingertips.
Yeah, we had discussed actually with a prior guest. Well, I've worked as a special effects makeup artist, and we had talked about how few schools there are doing special effects. In the United States, and then now they have like these online ones like Stan Winston School and stuff, where you can go online and kind of pick and choose what classes or workshops you want to do online, and it's a whole different world instead of having somebody there doing it in the classroom with you, whereas you can sit at home with your products and things like that and do it at home. So it's really cool seeing, because I haven't seen anything yet, or talked to anybody yet who has actually gone through and done one of the workshops or watched one of the videos, and then seen one of the final products. So this is really cool, being able to see what you guys were able to do with that. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely watching Frank and Zed. There's just a ton. There's a ton from the Stan Winston tutorials in there. Just so much, Yeah, they're. In fact, one of the things, like, I did a special shadow effect where these weapons are cursed, and so the shadows need to grow in these weapons, and it's like, okay, how are we going to make these shadows grow in a way that doesn't look like so stupid? And anyways, they had a technique on the site where you kind of make these custom balloons that you can inflate with a technique, and anyway, so we did that, and it worked great, and because with all this stuff, the amount of work you have to do just to do it, if you know exactly what you're doing, is like really daunting. But it doesn't take into account like all of the failures, like I said, with the failures of the shot. Well, when you're making stuff, you're going through the same thing. Like, this didn't work. That didn't work. This looks terrible. Like, for instance, like making the rocks, all the sets in Frank and Zed, like, okay, we can't, how do you turn blue foam and make it into a rock? Okay. All right. We got it to look like a rock. Now, how do you mount blue rock, like to a set? Like, how do you hold on to this stuff that just falls apart? So there's a whole thing of just trying to figure out, like, not even dressing the set, but just like how to attach stuff to the blue foam. So any place you have somebody showing you the way is just like awesome.
Mm-hmm. So what's your personal background in filmmaking?
I'm self-taught, so I just started making films when I was about 20, and I just haven't stopped.
Sweet.
Yeah, and I think there's a real blessing. The upside is you can jump into something like the puppets, like we have done, and not really worry about it. And the downside is, you don't have as many people showing you the easier way to do stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So there's been some obvious things, even something like on my very first tripod, which I actually still use, there's like a little lever that if you turn, it would be like kind of steady. And then if you didn't turn that lever, it's kind of wobbly and just seems like the biggest piece of shit. And I was cursing this tripod for years, just years. It's like, who would make this super piece of shit tripod? And then eventually found that lever. I was like, oh,
Okay, that's how that works.
Yeah. So, how many hundreds of those do you have? But anyways, yeah, I started just doing music videos and stuff, kind of classic thing, and had a lot of fun and just kind of kept at it. That's really been my journey.
So you always been into horror movies?
No, actually, I'm really pretty recent convert. Only maybe 10 years. I did a film for a buddy, and on a lark, I said, you know what? Let's have these guys at the very end that just get taken out by zombies. Let's just do it for fun. There's no zombies in the rest of the film, but we'll just end the film and there'll be this kind of zombie massacre. So I made essentially this little short film where these guys are running and then zombies appear and they get taken out. And it was a lot of fun, and it ended up getting picked up by George Romero kind of randomly, and he put it on. He packaged it as a bonus feature to one of his films.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and that was kind of like my first. And the other thing that's crazy, is this is a film too. This is a short where the zombies run. It's called Run for Your Life, and they do nothing but run. And so the fact that Romero would, who hated running zombies, just thought they were the dumbest thing ever. And reminds me, I gotta say, like one of my favorite Simon Pegg quotes is when they were asking him, apparently with Shaun of the Dead, he's like, why don't your zombies run? And he said, because death is not an energy drink. And anyways, I just like that has nothing to do with my story, but it's so funny. You got to say it. Anyways,
that's a great one.
That's great.
So I did that, and it was a lot of fun. And I realized, when you do horror, it's like so hard. It's so hard. Because you just like you just have to completely control the audience, and so I just kind of got bit by the bug and started to watch, more and more horror films, and and that's it. Although I'm not somebody who watches only horror at all. Sure. I love lots and lots of different stuff, and but obviously I'm a horror fan as well.
Yeah. Well, what are some of your favorite horror movies?
Some of my favorite horror films. Mm-hmm. I mean, The Thing is definitely. I mean, that's such a,
definitely, yeah.
Maybe a cliche answer, but it's just so good. It just holds up, and it holds up so well.
Yeah,
like
it's really great.
Yeah. Old Boy was in my top for forever, and then I rewatched it, and it didn't cling the same way. But you never know. I mean, I come to really mistrust my own judgment of film because it changes so often, viewing to viewing. But at the same time, but anyways, The Thing is definitely up there. Gremlins, I think, is like absolutely amazing.
I love it.
I'm a big, it's not quite maybe not quite horror, but I'm a big fan of Satoshi Kon, who's an animator that I absolutely love. Takeshi Miike is another. I'm a big fan of his, although he makes films faster than you can watch them, so you can't even like keep up with his stuff. But those would definitely, Slither is certainly in there as another favorite. Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is just like an amazing gem of a film. It's just so good. It's just so good. But and then a lot of the classics, like I rewatched the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and you're just like, man, this film is really good. Mm-hmm. It's just really good. I mean, we liked it so much, me and my wife, that after watching it again, we watched what's the one he did? It's like the zombie one with Jeff not Goldblum, the Dumb and Dumber Jeff. What is
Jeff Daniels?
Yes, Jeff Daniels. So like, anyway, so Wes Craven did another one with Jeff Daniels where it's like he gets possessed. Anyways, it's terrible. But anyway, so it's interesting kind of going back and going like, man, there's a reason like this original Freddy is like so good. And like, why is it so good? Like what about it is just, it's just kind of magical. But those are definitely like some of my favorites.
Yeah.
The Johnny Depp death scene in the beginning. Come on.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Well, and it's these films where the whole thing, yeah. It's these films where the whole thing works. Is I think what's especially so you have these scenes that jump out at you, but like the whole thing works.
Yeah, that's when you mention the thing, I always think that's the best combination of. It's both like just visually, it's the thing stuff is just great to look at, but it's also a great movie and all the performances. So it's just I like some movies that are only like, hey, it looks kind of cool, but when you have the combination of everything, it really works. Plus, the alien in the thing actually looks alien. It's not just like a guy in a suit or something. It's just something totally bizarre.
Yeah,
well, it has all this mystery to it. This just kind of winds you up. It starts off like they're trying to kill that dog. You're like, why are they trying to kill the dog? And then you watch it again and it's so obvious. But when you first watch it, you're like, man, those fuckers are trying to shoot a dog. What's wrong with them?
Exactly.
And it's so cool to see how that twists, Yeah. I would say, can I put the original Funny Games in there? The Haneke one? I would put that as like a horror film.
I love that movie.
It's just amazing. It's so good. It's.
Kids are so creepy in that.
Yeah, it's just like
I think one of the hardest questions to ask somebody is, what is your favorite horror movie? It's like, so many.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like you get into Haneke, like Benny's Video. Have you guys seen that one?
No,
I'm not.
Oh man, so have you seen that? So Haneke, he, yeah. If you liked Funny Games, then I think Benny's Video is like, it's just good. I mean, you talk about somebody who can just ratchet up the tension, just turn the screws, and that would, not a lot of people that would be on like a horror radar. But to me, I mean, you get into the question, like, what is a horror film?
Yeah.
Like Jurassic Park. I would say Jurassic Park is like one of my favorite horror films.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It is so fun and like, it's so funny and the monsters are so awesome and real.
Oh, yeah.
But how many people would say that's a horror film? Like a lot of people wouldn't, I mean, horror fans might, but like other people, I'm not into horror. Did you like Jurassic Park? Oh, I loved it. Well,
yeah, you're kind of into horror then.
Yeah. But those are, and those are all kind of like the kind of mainstream ones. But yeah, Benny's Video, Haneke
I'll have to look for that one.
Yeah, Haneke is just a crazy director. And he's got some other ones that are just kind of brutal to get through, and you're like, "What the fuck?" But Benny's Video is like, he did one that's like a Kafka one. I can't remember, the name escapes me, but anyways, he's definitely, I would put him up there for sure.
Yeah, and just since you mentioned you watch all different types of movies, what are just some of your favorite movies, regardless of genre?
I love Memento. I just watched that again, and that's just like
that's so good.
Yeah,
it's just so different. And I think the other thing too, like I love watching a movie and realizing how much I didn't get the first time.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Memento is just like, oh man, this like I didn't realize like he's kind of like he I didn't realize the real twist at the end until maybe even the second or third time I watched it. It didn't sink in that like the twist of him like fooling himself to kind of keep the hunt on, you know, and just how radically that shifts the movie.
Oh yeah,
you really like
no
the guy.
doubt.
You know, you really like the guy, and then it's like you're almost in denial. Then you watch it like the third time, and I was like, man, he is fucked up. You know, he's like, he's so fucked up, and I don't know, for someone to get away with that, it's just mind blowing. You know, it's just kind of dumbfounding. I got to say that Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, I haven't seen that in a long time, but man, that film, I think is just like so cool. Because it doesn't treat like it treats Shakespeare as like entertainment, and you watch it and you can understand what they're saying, you know. Whereas like I just tried to watch the new Slow Straighteners, Fassbender. He did a version of Hamlet, and it's just fucking awful. Yeah, it's so pretentious.
I hate that one too.
Yeah, it's so pretentious.
I have not seen that yet, and I love Fassbender too. I don't know if you've seen his movie Frank at all.
No.
He plays a musician, and he's the lead singer in this band, and the entire time he's got this giant mask on. It's like a big round paper mache head. It's great. Like he can to be able to act through something like that. I mean, you have to be a good actor to be able to do that. And so it's like, yeah, he can do his big, you know, major movies and stuff like that, but he does some really great indie movies too. So, but I have not seen that yet.
I can't recommend.
I'm glad you mentioned that though, because it that reminds me of some movies I saw recently that recent movies that I thought were fantastic were Green Room and Blue Ruin by the same director. I thought those were both like so good. And then Don't Breathe, I loved.
I love Don't Breathe.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I thought it was so good. It's so good, you know.
Everybody's so good in that one too.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's just like it's like a cool premise, just like taken up a notch. I really liked. I only saw it once, but I really liked It Follows. I thought it was also like.
I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah, I don't think that's one of Neil's favorites either, but I
have a big problem with it, but I know most people really dig it. So. I will say it is very original. I'll say that.
It is. Well, I just couldn't get into it, and I've tried rewatching it a few times, but I'm just like I just can't get into it. I don't know. I've tried.
I watched that film. So we had just moved. And my wife and my daughter were staying with her parents just because the house was like a mess. Anyways, so we just moved. There's like boxes kind of filling every room. So you can't even really you're kind of walking through this maze of boxes, and there's no curtains. So like all the windows are up. I'm like all by myself. I didn't know anything about It Follows. I hadn't seen, I like to watch movies like a Babe in the Woods, just knowing nothing about it.
Oh, that's awesome. Good.
Oh, I love it. It's like, I'm like, why would you do it to yourself? I mean, it's hard not to watch trailers, right? But why would you not want to watch a movie? Anyways, so I saw It Follows that way, and I was scared out of my fucking mind because I was like all by myself. All the windows were just these big squares that people could leap into, and then there was just these like boxes with clothing. So these kind of humanish shapes everywhere in a house that I had never slept in. And the thing is, we have a daughter, so I don't get to watch a movie with a sound on like ever. You know, it's like only subtitles, and you might get 45 minutes. So it was like a really big deal.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I might watch it again, and it might just not hold up whatsoever, but it was a really special experience that first time.
That's cool. Don't let it suck out.
If I watch a movie and I'm like, I don't know, you know, I'll give it a second watch. Maybe even a third, you know, just because maybe I just wasn't in the right mood or something that first time I saw it. And then if by the third time I'm just like, just don't think I can do it again. I generally don't, but yeah, I don't know. Everybody I was with, and every time I watched, I've been with people, and they've been like, "That was the best movie ever," and I've just been like, "Yeah, no."
For this year, I really liked the Devil's.
It was original, though. I will say it was original.
Yeah, it was original. Did you see the Devil's Candy? That's a recent one. I think is excellent.
No,
yeah, that
so
one
good.
I really like too.
Yeah,
really.
That one was amazing. Ethan Embry, haven't seen him do anything in a long time, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god, you went from being like this dorky kid teenage actor, and now you're like ripped adult like dad doing awesome horror. He was great in that movie. Yeah, I highly recommend it. Yeah, definitely check out Devil's Candy. That one was wonderful, and had I always forget his name. He was in Constantine too. The killer in
the big guy?
In Devil's Candy. Yeah. I can't remember his name, but he is great, and pretty much I will watch any movie that he's in because I know it's going to be a little twisted. So, yeah, Devil's Candy was an awesome movie.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite horror movie this year. I really liked it a lot.
If we came out the endorsement, I'll have to check that one out.
Mm-hmm.
Another good one. Another good, like, kind of under the radar one recently was Seoul Station, which is the prequel to Train to Busan.
Oh, I just watched Train to Busan. That was pretty good.
Yeah, this one it's so cool because it's animated. And I wasn't expecting that at all. But check that out if you get a chance to.
Oh yeah, yeah. I liked it. I thought Train to Busan had a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, I liked it a ton too.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah, what I liked about that was it wasn't an American movie, and usually zombie movies are American, so there's a lot of guns in them. And it was interesting to see a movie where there's really no one has any guns, and how you how you're going to combat zombies without being able to just shoot them in the head. So I thought it was.
I'm surprised there hasn't been more zombies, just like not in the modern era. I mean, it seems like that seems so obvious, and it's just there hasn't been much. I mean, you got Game of Thrones, obviously, but there just hasn't been too much of it.
Yeah.
So this is something like I was going to bring up about like with your movie. I mean, it's original, it's different. You have zombie in it, and we were talking last week, there's been a little resurgence of these really unique zombie movies come out, like Train to Busan, Girl with All the Gifts. Now, I don't know if you saw Girl with All the Gifts, but that movie just floored me.
It was really
amazing
I haven't
movie, Like,
that was one like you that I went in. I didn't know anything about it, and until about 10 or 15 minutes in. That will spoil for you, but that it's a zombie movie, and I was like, "Oh, this is." I didn't know what was going on to begin with, and I agree with you though. If you go into a movie and not know anything about it, it's so much more fun.
Yeah, it's just been great seeing everybody's creativity like coming back and not having to see the same old zombie movie over and over and over getting rehashed, and it's like I miss George Romero's old unenergized zombies, but like just these new different ways to portray them. I love the stories, the storyline of the movie. It's really nice to have. It gets you more involved into the character, makes you care more or whatever. So yeah,
and it's been too long since I saw. It's been too long since I saw a mob of people with torches. I always liked that in the old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that.
When someone gets chased out of town with torches.
Last time I saw a movie like that I loved was Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I say like Beauty and the Beast, maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Beauty and the Beast.
We're
There's some
50
good
Frenchmen strong and 50 Frenchmen can't be wrong. Let's kill the beast.
Speaking of Young Frankenstein, it was last year. I was taking an Uber home, and the kid was driving, and I mentioned I just went to I think it was the Halloween marathon, and they showed the original Frankenstein. He's like, "Oh yeah, I saw the original black and white one," and he started explaining it, and then I realized he was talking about Young Frankenstein.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Man, that's great.
So, how's the best way to follow you and all your puppet madness online?
I mean, definitely Facebook is kind of the obvious choice. That's where we're kicking out a lot of stuff. But also the Kickstarter right now, if you chip in even $1, we have kind of a just, hey, check in and follow along. Then that goes throughout the length of the movie. So that doesn't, obviously stop when the Kickstarter campaign stops. So that's another way, of course, that we'd love to have people kind of join in with us. We'll do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, exclusive outtakes, just other things to hopefully, make it fun. But those are really cool. the two main ways to stay involved.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Awesome.
And it's been awesome talking to you. And I'm not just because you're here, I'm really looking forward to seeing this. This is right up my alley.
Well, awesome.
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to go.
Thanks a lot for.
Where's St. Troy?
Oh.
This was one of those great finds that, I don't think, anybody really expected something like this. And it's just, It seems that so many people just love the idea of the whole puppet horror thing. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks. I'm very anxious and excited to get the movie out and to see what people think of it, of the full 90 minutes, Yeah.
And if you do get it at a convention, we'll try to be there, because I do think it would be pretty sweet to see it on the big screen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, we should definitely talk more, because I'm in my little cave kind of working on films, and I have done such a terrible job at connecting with people. So I'd love to talk more about all stuff,
Oh,
that sounds great.
You're always
We will
welcome.
be your cheerleaders.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Neil already has pom-poms. So
I love the graphic treatment you did, just even for the show. It's so I was like, oh, that's what I've been trying to do and just failing, just doing a terrible job. And I was like, that's fucking cool. That's like rock and roll.
Well, thank you. I do all the banners.
Oh man, the banner was so dope. I loved it. I'm gonna if I have time and energy, I'm gonna totally ape it on the Kickstarter campaign and throw away all my crap. Yeah, it's so cool. It's I loved it.
Yeah, I enjoy making them, and this is good. I'm happy when people like them.
Oh, you could tell. It totally comes out. It looks great.
he's the banana man.
I did see the Dark Crystal when it came out on the big screen. I think we saw it at the drive-in, didn't we? Troy's my older brother, by the way. Yeah. And I think it was raining that night, though, so it was very dark.
It was.
Is it too dark?
It was dark at the Dark Crystal.
Yeah, and we saw the darkest crystal.
I'll remember that, because I think we had a van full of kids. We had all the neighborhood kids, because I think the drive-in was $5 for
car,
for a carload. So we'd gather up all the neighborhood kids. Yeah, gather them in the van and go to the drive-in. And then it was raining, so we all had to stay inside. So it was a crappy experience.
Glad I brought that up. So
yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Good memories. Way to go.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
It was a great time.
Bye.
Hey, this is Eduardo Sanchez, co-director of the Blair Witch Project, and you're listening to Without Your Head.